This is Arts Alive. I'm Lynda Philippi. My guest is Lex Runciman, who is a longtime and much beloved professor at Linfield College. He's here to talk about his work and also his involvement with the upcoming Terroir Festival in April. So welcome.
Thank you very much. It's
I'm
a
glad
pleasure.
I'm glad you could be here today.
Me too. Yeah.
So let's start out. I know you've been at Linfield a long time, and you said, you know, it goes way, way, way back.
The prior century.
Exactly. But let's talk about the work that you've got something new coming up.
I do. I have a new book of poems coming out. It's by Salmon Publishing from Ireland.
Okay.
They published my earlier book in 2009, and they're going to do a new one. It's called 1 Hour That Morning and Other Poems. And it's exciting. I finished the manuscript this last summer, and that's an interesting project, because what you have to do in order to finish is carry all of the contents and all of the possible contents in your head, and then try and shuffle them. Because what you're trying to figure out is an order. Poets don't have the advantage of writing chapters like novelists, or even essays like people who write memoirs. So
it's not chronological necessarily.
Not necessarily, and if it's thematic, it can get boring in a hurry. So you're trying to make a reading experience that's interesting for the crazy, lonely 1 or 2% of the people who will actually try and read the thing straight through, sooner or later, maybe. But it's also interesting if you're the writer, because it forces you to figure out what the heck you've been doing, and because you have to decide what to include and what to exclude, and that's not a decision you've had to worry about up until that point. So, so that's been fun. It's a little scary. Self-doubt is a serious concern sometimes, but when you're done, you either think, gee, this is the best thing ever, or this is just terrible and I hope nobody notices.
So, that's an interesting
It's new
point.
art.
When you're talking about, as a poet, I mean, if you're writing a novel, you can hand it off to readers, and you can say, does the story have an arc? Can you follow the thread? I mean, does the character will develop? And people can give you valuable feedback.
Sure.
But I mean, every poem is a discrete
It
world unto itself.
Yeah.
So to have readers judge every poem, oh God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you really have to have good friends.
Right.
And the trouble with good friends I'm in favor of. Don't get me wrong. Good friends are great. But the trouble with good friends is that they don't want to hurt your feelings.
Right.
And so, and good friends who are willing to hurt your feelings, if you're a writer, those are the really good friends.
Right.
Because they're risking a friendship in favor of a more accurate feedback.
They have to believe in the deeper truth that you're.
That's right, and the deeper aspiration that probably you both share.
Right.
And so, yes, that makes it trickier. And with a book, and I think this is true whether it's a novelist or somebody who writes nonfiction, or whether it's a poet, you're going to have a relatively small number of those occasions in your life. The book of poems, it's 80 pages or something like that. There maybe are 45 or 50 poems in it. So how do those go together? Well, it's my 5th book, so I've had 4 previous practices. But that's all.
Yeah.
So there's a Pacific Northwest writer, another poet named Vern Ratsala, and he published 4 books, and then his 5th one was called The Journey Begins. Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought, well, okay. I mean, and I think it was
you
meant.
Get it.
I think I do, and I think it was meant somewhat tongue-in-cheek, a little bit. Like, I think I'm finally getting the hang of this now. So.
Well, I think part of it too is, you have to feel comfortable and get to the point where you really trust yourself. Like you said, it's kind of scary, but this is it. I mean, it's
what you can do.
This is who you are, and this is what you're bringing. So, I think, you have to just trust that it's good enough, right? That it's
Well, as I
works.
said, it's the best you can do, and sooner or later, as an artist, as anybody making art, actually anybody making anything, sooner or later you stand behind it.
You
say,
do.
This is the dress I made. This is the the omelet I cooked, you know.
Exactly.
And this is the wine we made, or whatever.
So how did you find the publisher from Ireland?
Well, that's an interesting story, actually. I was browsing websites that are composed of nothing but long lists of publishers with links. And this was 1992, 1993, something like that. And I came across a name in the list, and it was called Salmon Publishing. And I thought, oh, Salmon, Pacific Northwest.
Of course, yeah.
And so I clicked on the link and found out that they were in County Clare, Ireland,
Wow.
of all places. And I thought, okay, so nothing's going to come of this. But I liked what they were doing. They had a wonderful website. And I thought, okay, I will just email this editor 4 poems, and I will say something like, this is pretty close to what I said, I think. I found your name. I found the name of your press in a list. I thought you were in the Pacific Northwest,
Right,
because I am, but I see that the waters of Ireland and the waters of the Pacific Northwest share a fish in common, and it means something in both places.
Sure.
So here are 4 poems. Good luck to you all. And I never expected to get a response at all, of any sort. I felt good about, sort of sending a hello.
Maybe you'd get a form letter with the Irish blessing back or something.
Maybe. That would have been nice. Yes, absolutely. And that would have been sufficient. I mean, more than sufficient.
But
3 weeks later, I got a note from the editor saying, we liked what you sent. Do you have a manuscript? Now, this never happens. Yeah, I mean, but it did.
It was meant to be.
Apparently.
I love it.
I don't know. Yeah. So I sent them a manuscript, and it took a while, and money being what it is in the publishing business, especially small publishing, which is what they do, it took a while for the first book to come out, but it did, and then they've said they want to do another one, and in the meantime, they've grown more prosperous and more prestigious, and they said, as I said, they asked for the next manuscript, and I said, oh, thank you. No, I said, of course.
Of course.
Yes.
Not a problem. Let me just whip out 50 poems by next Tuesday, and I'll have those off to you.
Well, it's more like 5 years.
I was going to ask you, how long did it take to actually develop all the poems for this new work?
About 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, about 5 years.
I mean, it's really, I guess, kind of amazing that you are able to write as much as you do, considering that you teach full time, and you have to go through all the students' work, and
that's true.
And have some sort of a life of your own as well. I mean, that's interesting. That I think sometimes that just having to go through everybody else's work would kind of shut down the voice in your own head, but that's not true.
Well, it tires you.
Yeah.
It tires you, and you want to assert your own voice against. Not necessarily against, but in contrast to sometimes. And I think it's an advantage being a poet because the forms are smaller.
Yeah.
And I can get what I feel as though it's useful work done in a half an hour. And a fiction writer maybe will just feel like she or he is just beginning after a half hour and really want 3 or 4 hours at a stretch to essentially go into that fictional world and inhabit it. But I don't have to go do that.
Right.
My imagination doesn't have to do that. What I have to inhabit are the lines on the page, or I need to put something to fill the spaces.
Do you have a writing routine?
Sometimes. I try and keep one. It depends a lot on what my schedule is from semester to semester and so on. This semester it's fairly clear. I'm going to have early mornings. My wife gets up and she works and has to be out of the house by about 6:30.
Oh my heavens, okay.
So that's early. But the alarm's going off, earlier than that, obviously. We have coffee together. She has a little tiny bit of breakfast. She goes, I have 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. And so far, at least, I'm using it and loving it.
Oh, that's great.
And the nice thing about it, I count reading as writing. That is, if what I'm reading with the purpose not for just entertainment or diversion. I do that too. I read murder mysteries for diversion. I mean, just to sort of not have to worry.
Sort of clear your mind.
Yeah, I don't have to analyze it. I don't have to teach it. I mean, so. But there are other kinds of reading that I do, and I'm reading partly to find out what's on the page, but I'm also trying to figure out, okay, how'd they do this? What are they doing, and how did they do it? and because ultimately I want to steal from it. I don't necessarily want to steal the idea or the theme even, but I want to steal the moves. So,
Well, it's like watching Michael Jackson and deciding you're going to moonwalk. It's sort of
exactly.
the same thing.
No, that's
it's
exactly
your
right.
moonwalk,
That's exactly right.
but you wouldn't have thought about it if you hadn't
Yeah.
seen him do it, right?
Yeah.
Who would?
And I had a teacher, years ago who said, he said to me, it was very valuable, and now, of course, I repeat it and claim it as my own, that if you're a writer, one way you can read is as though you wrote everything that you're reading. So now, how'd you do it?
That's a good point.
Yeah, and
Break it down.
Break it down. Figure it out. See, I mean, okay, so the first bit does this, and then the next bit does this completely unexpected second thing, and then the third bit does this, and oh, okay, so you just do something that does that, that, and that. Just try it. Using your material, your impulse, whatever it is.
It's like a recipe.
Kinda.
Yeah, in
Except
a way.
it's completely unpublished, and you have to intuit it.
Right.
It's like eating a meal, and you have to figure out what all the ingredients are.
Yeah.
And
how
how
it
they
was
were
done.
and how they were how they were cooked. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow, I love it though. That's a great analogy. Now,
Yeah.
do you sort of explain that the same way when you're teaching?
I try to.
Yeah.
It's not that strange or mysterious a process, I don't think.
No.
Well, it's no stranger or mysterious than any number of other things. Let's just put it that way. So
Except for perhaps trigonometry.
I don't know anything about.
I don't
trigonometry.
either.
I've married a mathematician.
Did you?
Yeah, she handles it.
Oh, that's perfect.
Absolutely.
Gosh, you lucked out.
I did.
Very, very smart move. It's like, what don't I know how to do?
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah, I married somebody that's good with the cars.
There we
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
I don't really like to
Yeah.
think about the cars. So.
Yeah, some people want, versions of themselves to partner with, and some people want complementary versions, and
Exactly.
it probably always works out to be a little of both.
So when you do the Terroir
Yeah.
workshop, what are you gonna? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, everybody who does any kind of writing has to figure out, A, how to get something down on the page, anything, in my opinion. Just
Start.
get something, yeah. And then what to do with it afterwards. And there are a bunch of different things that can be said about both of those processes, and I'm going to try and talk about those things. So how do you get from nothing to something, and how do you get from something to something better? And an awful lot of it is sort of what not to do. For example, don't look at something that you've just started and tell yourself it's terrible,
Right.
because it's too early to judge. It's like looking at an egg that's in the egg and saying, that is a terrible omelet. Well, of course it is. It's just,
It's not there yet.
It hasn't there. Nothing's been done to it yet. So judging prematurely is very easy. We're always in a hurry. We're impatient, and so in some cases we might be habitually too eager to judge our own work before we've given it any chance. That's a really ugly tree. Well, yeah, it's a year old and it's this tall. Yeah, 30 years from now, it's going to be gorgeous. You don't have to wait 30 years, but you do have to give something its
Give it
due
a little
time.
bit of time.
Yeah.
Well, Terroir is April 19th,
Right?
and people can sign up
Yep.
hopefully soon and sign up to take your workshop.
I'd love it. Yeah.
I really want to thank you for being here today. Thanks
Well,
so much.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.